Hello, everyone. This is a special guest interview, and we are joined by soccer football legend Ryan Babel. Ryan, thank you so much for joining myself and Chris over here at Bitcoin Magazine. How are you doing out in Istanbul?
Thanks for having me. I'm doing great. I'm doing great. So can't complain.
For those of our viewers who maybe aren't as familiar with you or your illustrious career, can you just give a quick cliff notes on sort of your background, where you've played, and what country you play for?
Yeah. Well, I grew up in Holland, Amsterdam. Yeah, my first team was Ajax Amsterdam. I played there in the youth academy. I was fortunate to make my professional debut at 17. I played 3 consecutive seasons for Ajax in my first period of time, and then I had a transfer to the UK, to Liverpool, 2007. I played there almost 4 years, and I think that's where I think most people know me from my time at Liverpool. And yeah, after that, I had a rocky journey with a lot of ups and downs. Um, Ended up here now in Turkey for the Turkish club giant Galatasaray. And yeah, meanwhile, I'm 35. Been a while in the football world. I still have no desire to quit football. I still feel well. So yeah, that's in a nutshell what I've been through.
I mean, it's so impressive that you're still playing at such a high level at 35. Like, what are you doing to maintain your physicality? And if you could, would you play up until deep into your 40s, 50 years old, if your body will let you?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, if I could, I would definitely do that. I still feel the desire to play this game. Makes me happy. I'm still hungry to perform and do well. Of course, at a certain age, you have to also maintain, your body fitness. You have to eat properly. You have to rest well, and it also takes a lot of physical treatments from time to time, to try to get rid of little pains, and that's how you maintain yourself, and if you're serious about it, then yeah, you can play for a long period of time.
Love that. Talk to us a little bit. We sort of came across and crossed paths because I was, on social media on our Bitcoin Magazine account, just sort of trolling, trying to see who I might recognize. And I noticed that you follow us. Talk to us a
Yeah,
little bit about how you came across Bitcoin and sort of who introduced it to you.
yeah. um I was kind of introduced the very first time in Bitcoin in 2017. um I'm running a music company, and one of my artists was like, yeah, my friend said you should buy Bitcoin. Is this next thing that will make you a lot of money? And at that point, of course, those type of people who approach you for the best and the next great idea to invest in, and then sometimes you run with it, and then obviously you lose money. So this was one of those times where I felt again like, whatever, and then he kept pushing like, listen, Bitcoin went up, and I had no idea what it was. And then all of a sudden I read something in mainstream media, and I was like, you know what, let me just give it a try. It was actually from my part just a gamble, and I acquired some Bitcoin, and then Bitcoin crashed. It crashed big time, and that point I realized, like, see, gambling and investing in something I don't know is never for me, so I will never do it again. Um, luckily, the smartest thing that I ever did was not selling it. I was just leaving it. Um, and then also, yeah, I was lucky enough to save my keys and my ledger in a secure place, unintentionally, to be honest. And then yeah, as of 2020, all of a sudden I spontaneously read an article that Bitcoin was at its all-time high from back in 2000, I think 17 or 18, over 20,000. And that made me curious, like, why did it come back? And that's where I, took responsibility to dive into the rabbit hole and try to find out what Bitcoin really was. And the journey so far is amazing. The education and everything that you learn is very fascinating. But of course, at the end of the day, if you know what you invest into, then you feel way more comfortable. So that's where I'm at today.
Those diamond hands really paying off for you, Ryan.
Right.
You got to love that. I'm a little curious because you mentioned you have a music company. You obviously spend a good chunk of your time playing soccer. You're also studying Bitcoin. What do you do if you have any free time at all?
If I have free time.
Yeah. Do you ever have free time?
I mean, yeah, I consider football being the time that I'm busy, and anything else is something. Obviously, it keeps me busy, but I enjoy doing it. So it's not like being busy as an obligation of I have to do this, or it's something that I want to do, right? So I constantly try to stay busy. The last 4 or 5 years, it's mostly education on different levels. Real estate, economics, cryptocurrencies, because there comes a time where you have to hang up your boots and then you have to dive in the real world, and then what, right? So mostly the motivation came from athletes are known for going bankrupt very quick, after they retire, and that's just pure based off that they didn't educate themselves how to manage their finances, right? So I definitely don't want to be one of those athletes, and I did pretty well for myself investing in real estate. And at one point I felt like me trying to share my education and knowledge to my colleagues, and try to smarten them up a little bit more. That's where I'm at today. It's fun. It inspires me to do that, and one brick at a time.
Yeah, Ryan, I think that's a great story. And I think yours is not too unsimilar to other professional athletes across, any sport, basically here in the States, right, or even football internationally. I guess, did you do research on your own end? Do you have like financial money managers for yourself? Do you like to do your own research in that regard, or manage your own finances for real estate and stuff?
Well, I do have, like, actually my agent, lucky enough, he was a guy who always helped me manage. But in general, I manage my own stuff. He just gave me advice. He gave me direction. He told me very early on at one point to invest in real estate, and the reason why. And that's where I took responsibility to slowly dive into, what type of real estate, and then how are the good ways to invest in real estate. And when it comes to Bitcoin, it was totally myself, took responsibility, like I said. And again, the journey has been fascinating. And just also to learn and understand what's happening in the world, with the money printing and then all the governments, manipulating systems. Very fascinating to learn how the system works. Yeah.
For sure. And I guess, soccer is great that it's such a truly international, or soccer or football is such a truly international sport. So obviously you have teammates from not just, Turkey or whatever country you're playing, but from globally. Are you able to learn a lot about finances and stuff from teammates that come from other countries and other different backgrounds as well? Yeah,
I mean, in general, the football system in terms of finance is the same. However, what you notice now here, me being in Turkey, the Turkish players, they are getting paid in the Turkish lira, and as we know, You know, the Turkish currency right now is doing very bad. Yeah, you know, these people here, the Turkish people, they have to come up with a solution, right? And yeah, as we know, we all know more or less what that answer is. But yeah, it's up to them to wake up and get educated in understanding how they can, you know, save their life savings and their wealth.
Yeah, I'd love to discuss that a little deeper. I mean, you are in one of the countries that is very hard hit very hard by inflation right now.
Yeah.
Talk to us about sort of what conversations you have with the Turkish players, but also conversations that you just have with Turkish citizens when you're out and around
Right.
the town. What is that
Right.
feeling like when inflation is creeping up? And how are people hiding, or I say hiding, but how are people storing their money during these
Yeah.
times that you're noticing?
Well, what you especially notice here is, you know, the education system is in my opinion, at a very, you know, low level, unfortunately. The majority of people don't speak English, so it's very difficult to communicate with them. Most of the Turkish people have never been outside their city, or let alone outside the country. So, you know, it's very difficult for them to catch up to, you know, the modern day education level of, you know, how we are now getting educated with all the information that's out there. But, you know, most of my conversations is with teammates, of course, you know, and you know, it's very difficult to sometimes have a deep conversation about those things, because especially with the younger football players, they are very busy with themselves and it's only football, right? So they're very distracted. So slowly I try to plant seeds here and there to try to, you know, open their eyes, like, hey, you know, football, definitely focus on football, but there where you have a little bit of time, you know, go read 30 minutes a chapter of what's going on, or try now, you know, watch a YouTube video about, you know, stuff that's happening. Because yeah, you know, a career is very short. If you're lucky, it's 15 years. If you're unlucky, it takes only 10 years, and then you have to retire, and then what, right? So these are little conversations I slowly have. Also bear in mind, you know, football players in general, they have an ego, right? So if you approach them to try and tell them what to do, they get very offensive. So yeah, slowly and carefully I try to, you know, ease them into yeah, what's happening basically.
Did you or have you ever gifted any of them some Bitcoin just to put some skin in the game for them, or give them a little to see how it works?
Yeah, no, I've never done that. I've never done that. But you know, I definitely opened the conversation, you know, about Bitcoin. But again, you know, I leave it up to them. If they at the end want to learn more, you know my door is always open for asking questions, of course, with you know, the basic understanding that I know, how to translate it in their language. But again, also myself, I still learn a lot. I still don't know a lot of things. But again, it's fun, and it's yeah, it's motivating.
I think that's one of the best things about, I think, all the Bitcoin industry and all people in Bitcoin, whether it's myself or Chris or even you, we would all agree and say there's so much to know. And while we may know some of it, we don't know all of it. And we're all always
Right.
learning more about Bitcoin.
Right.
Talk to me and Chris right now as though we are one of your teammates. Hey, Ryan, I'm a little stuck. I need to start saving. What is this Bitcoin thing that you won't shut up about?
Right. Well, the few things that I would always talk about is like, you know, how we've been raised by our parents in having a savings account for rainy days. Nowadays, obviously, it's not a good idea anymore to have a saving account in the bank, because yeah, you know, you hardly get interest, and in some situations you actually now have to pay the bank. You know, in Holland right now, if you hold over 100,000 euros in the bank, you have to pay the bank money to keep your money in the bank. So yeah, storing money in the bank is not a good idea, right? So basically, I translated you know, to those players that Bitcoin is basically a savings account. So you just swap your savings account for storing your savings account into Bitcoin. And you know, from there, I slowly go in depth in explaining why it's a good idea, because, you know, you're very quick. They're going to talk about the volatility, of course. So yeah, you know, I always give a little analogy, like, look, maybe in a savings account you don't see the volatility, but you definitely know it's a melting ice cube. So your wealth is going down slowly. That's a fact, right? So yeah, with Bitcoin, even though it goes ups and downs in a week or in a month, I also tell them, like, you don't buy Bitcoin or you don't store Bitcoin for a month or for a few months, you know, you store it for a lifetime. So I said, often, you know, also what I've learned is if you zoom out, you can see how the journey has been so far and what the potential is. And we're still very early, as we know. So yeah, there's really no worries if you just store, you know, your savings account, what you were not going to touch anyway, anytime soon, in Bitcoin.
That's a great explanation, Ryan. And also, we're kind of seeing on the world stage right now, unfortunately, everything that's going on with Ukraine and Russia, that Bitcoin has many use cases. It's pretty fascinating to watch Ukrainians transfer their wealth into Bitcoin and be able to escape basically the clutches of war. And then also watch as Russian citizens that have no fault of their own, under the guise of their own, you know, authoritarian leader in Putin, you know, they didn't want to drop bombs. And even a lot of videos coming out of soldiers that were captured in Ukraine saying they thought they were liberating Ukraine. They thought that it was under Nazi regime, only to show up and be the completely opposite story. You know, that basically they were lied to by their government and told to go and harm people. So they were able to store their wealth in Bitcoin, as basically the world is boycotting Russia and the actions that they've done. It's a real shame that they're trying to hurt Putin, but in turn, they're actually just hurting the people of Russia that, like, no fault of their own, are just Russian citizens. So aside from that, you know, we've seen many use cases like in Turkey with inflation and escaping the clutches of war or sanctions. Is there any other use cases that you see for Bitcoin that people haven't thought of potentially, or that have crossed your mind in thinking about Bitcoin?
Well, I mean, I also read here and there that athletes taking salaries in Bitcoin. I only was wondering how that would translate into them, because I mean, at the end of the day, you still need a portion for your expenses, in my opinion. That's what I would think. So I'm wondering if these type of athletes then convert it back into their currency, or, you know, I'm just wondering that process for those individuals. So, but again, I mean, I think it's a smart idea. But yeah, I think still, you know, Bitcoin hasn't, of course, fully tapped into the possibilities that are potentially can happen. Yeah, again, you know, I think it's the possibilities could be endless, you know, with Bitcoin. Companies slowly converting, you know, their balance sheet and try to integrate Bitcoin. I see, yeah, definitely the next decade, a lot of changes in a positive way. Yeah.
Ryan, just to maybe help clarify what you brought up about some athletes who've been taking salary in Bitcoin, it truly varies. I think some of them, for example, a perfect example of this is Odell Beckham Jr., who, when he signed a contract with the Rams, his entire salary was in Bitcoin. However, that was the only contract. That's the only contract that was in Bitcoin. So he essentially said, and all of this money is savings. All of
Okay.
the other money he has, whether it's an endorsement deal, a speaking engagement, personal appearance, those type of things, he was still collecting in cash. There's
Okay.
also, it's not like a one-time payment in the same way that you're paid on a weekly or a bi-weekly basis. That's how often he's collecting that money in Bitcoin.
Okay.
Beyond that, you can scale it down.
Mm.
I personally do not. I like to be a little bit more hands-on with my money. But I
Mhm.
know that some of our colleagues take 50% of their salary in Bitcoin. And there are
Okay.
different apps that help you facilitate that.
Right.
Unfortunately, and I ran into this issue last night. But the apps that are available in the US versus I'm currently in Mexico are different. And the apps that are available in Turkey are different than the apps available in Mexico and the US.
Right.
Until this type of regulation ceases to exist and essentially says if you're an internet company, you can operate anywhere there is internet access, which I think that should be the way it works.
Mhm.
Until that happens, there are hurdles in place, unfortunately. I am hopeful, especially in a country like Turkey that has had a
Yeah.
lot of conversations with the president of El Salvador, that is dealing with a dire situation, that some sort of legalization or legal tender will open the
Yeah.
floodgates. And all of a sudden,
Right.
it won't just be one or two apps. You'll have hundreds of different apps, and then you'll be able to sort of negotiate between them and say, hey, you're charging too high of a fee. I'm going to take my business elsewhere.
Right. Right. Makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting.
I do want to, and I would be remiss as someone who I will admit this, man. I am a diehard Arsenal fan. You broke my
Okay.
heart. You broke my heart quite a few times. Um, Talk to us about the Premier League. This is, in my opinion, the creme de la creme. When I was a soccer or football player, I aspired to one day just set foot on one of those pitches. Talk to
Yeah.
us about the experience of playing in
Yeah.
England and what that was like for you.
Yeah. I think it's weird. It's only since I've left I realized how amazing it was playing there. But once you're in it, you get sucked away by the pace of the game, the pace of living. You have so many games, a lot of traveling. You have to constantly be on your toes and stay ready. So it's sometimes it's almost difficult to really enjoy and take in. But as far as my memory goes, like every time when I was able to play, especially at Anfield, was amazing, was special. Champions League nights, that particular night that you referred to against Arsenal, that was magic. Was magic, and that was a very, very good Arsenal. We were a little bit lucky in the first game on the Arsenal ground, but we were able to turn it around at a home game, and we knew already. Playing at Anfield gives that little extra, and especially with the fans, you can kind of go that extra mile, and anything could have been possible. And that season we did it already a few times. So also against Arsenal, we had good hope to win the game, and at the end we were able to, and good memories. Also scoring, good memories for sure.
As you can see by my hat, I'm a Spurs fan. So we got an Arsenal fan, a Spurs fan, and then Ryan's played for both Liverpool and Fulham. So going over to your Fulham career, obviously another London club. When you first arrived there, or I don't know if it was right before then or whatever, but I know you were rocking the red hair. I'd love to hear the story behind the red hair while you were at Fulham, and then even a little bit at Besiktas. I believe you have that as well.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, I mean, no real special story there. It was actually, I tried something different just for the holidays, and I actually saw a music video where Pharrell Williams was rocking the red hair, and I was like, hey, that looked really cool, awesome, and I was like, let me give it a try, and then I tried it. And then I went on my holiday, and I got all these, like awesome comments, and people gave me compliments. And then I was like, my goal was to shave it off before the season was going to start. And at the end, I had so much confidence. I was like, you know what, I'm going to start the pre-season, and let's see how, they take it in at the club. And where I was playing at that moment was Besiktas. And Everyone was taking it in. They, of course, you have the begin phases where people had to get used to it, but everything was fine. And I just remained keeping it. And all of a sudden I recognized marketing ideas and consistency in keeping it red. And then the new FIFA game came out. They made my hair red, so I was like, okay, you know what, I'm gonna stick to this hairstyle. And it was fun. It was fun to be out of the ordinary a little bit. And yeah, that's actually the story behind it. No no ordinary story.
That's funny. I really like
Yeah.
that. I guess where was I going to go with that? I was going to go with, I'm drawing a complete blank here. Yeah,
Right.
Your agent must have loved it, first off. And secondly, I want to ask, because Chris or I have never, nor will we ever, play or be a part of a World Cup final.
Ooh,
What was that experience like? I
yeah,
have chills going down my spine. I remember watching,
yeah,
I watched that match 3 different times because it was one of
right.
my favorite matches I've ever seen.
Yeah,
A whole 120 minutes of it too.
yeah. You know what? Of course, as a country of Holland, we for decades, we had good generations, but never came so close. Like it was always, losing with penalties against Brazil in '98. And now you had a generation where, okay, they were good. We had a good team. In my opinion, not as good if you look at the generation with Patrick Kluivert, Seedorf, Davids, Bergkamp, Overmars, these generation. But we were able to reach the final, and now we were close. And now you had to play against an incredible Spain. And as the match, carries on, you actually notice that, hey, it's pretty even. It was not Spain 100% dominating, and we had chances, but it was just that, in my opinion, that little 10% what we didn't had, what Spain had, was that real like togetherness, you know. In my opinion, why we didn't win the World Cup, right? And I already, it's funny because I already gave my opinion a little while ago, and I got a lot of backlash for it. But I mean, at this point, I don't really care anymore. But at that time, we had like how they wrote in the media. We had the big four, and the big four were Van Persie, Robben, Sneijder, and Van der Vaart. And the Dutch media was basically only writing about them and not about the group as a whole. So a lot of these other players like Nigel de Jong or a Van Bommel, or a Van Bronckhorst, or our defenders, they felt kind of underrated, so it was only about those type of players. Okay, however, we were managing to reach the final, and then you had two situations where Arjen Robben was able to score a goal, one-on-one with the keeper, and he missed. There was even one situation where I felt like, I think it was Pujol, who kind of like dragged him. And normally, if you know Arjen Robben, he always fell very quick. So in my opinion, strategically, he should have felt, and then Pujol was going to get a red card and we're going to finish the game against 10 men. But he wanted to score the winning goal to be the man of the big four, right?
Right.
But he didn't score. So that was my experience and opinion, because there was also a little thing going on between those four. Like, okay, the big four, but who's number one, right? Sneijder wanted to be number one. Arjen Robben wanted to be number one. Van Persie wanted to be number one. At the end of the day, it was the tournament of Wesley Sneijder with 5 goals. And I guess that was kind of like maybe eating up, Arjen Robben a little bit. And that's why, he saw obviously opportunity to score in the World Cup final. So he tried to do whatever it takes to score that goal instead of thinking about the long-term process is, hey, if we can have a red card for their best defender, Pujol, we have another 30 minutes to play. Maybe we can then win the game, 10 men against Spain. But, he tried to stay on his feet, and therefore he was not able to execute the shot properly how he normally could. And Casillas saved the ball, and yeah, we end up losing that game. But this is my experience now, like constantly going back of like what went wrong, right? And that's my opinion, and I know, a lot of Dutch people are gonna give me a hard time for saying those things and whatever, but it is what it is, I'm just being straight up.
We pay
Ryan.
them no mind. We
Yeah.
pay
Right.
them no mind here.
Yeah. So Ryan, soccer is a very interesting sport that obviously you spend the better part of probably 10 months or 9 months out of your career with your club team, but then obviously there's
Yeah.
these scheduled breaks to be with teammates internationally. So what's the closeness or the difference of players, your teammates at your club versus teammates at the international level? How does that compare? Because we don't have anything like that in the States, aside from maybe the Olympics when the teams meet up,
Right.
or an all-star game or something like that. But for the most part,
Yeah.
it's you're only with your team. And then if you get traded, you're obviously somewhere else. Can you explain
Yeah.
that to someone?
Yeah, I mean, I think the main difference is when you're with your national team, everyone is Dutch, everyone speak your language, your hometown language, and it's it's a catching up. You follow each other. Everyone plays in different leagues, so it's a nice catching up. Most of the time, each other from growing up. You already played against each other in youth teams and stuff, so you already know each other, and then it's special, of course, when you're able to see players making it and then go internationally, and then you come back together, for an international game, and I think that's the main difference. Club teams, you have different cultures, players from different nationalities, and every time you get to know a new person if you go to a different team, and yeah, you learn from each other, all the different type of players that you play with on the club level, and yeah, that is something that makes you also at the end the person you end up being, because yeah, you have to respect everyone. You have played sometimes with Muslims, you play with Christians, you play with Jewish players, and everyone has their way of preparing for a match or food, how they eat and whatever. And yeah, sometimes it's fascinating to see how they those individuals prepare for games. Yeah.
I have to ask this, but saying full disclosure, I support both the US national team as well as Iran's national team.
Right.
In the last two World Cups, however, in Brazil, Iran did not qualify, and in Russia, both the US and Holland did not, unfortunately, qualify for the World Cup. I am hopeful. Iran has qualified, and I'm hopeful that the US will. How do you feel about Holland's chances, both qualifying and then in the World Cup later this year?
Yeah, I think right now Holland, is very good on paper to qualify. They have confidence to do that, and I think very soon, they will play. I think their final matches to decide and everything. But yeah, they again, Holland has a good generation, a lot of experienced players who play for big teams. They have a very good coach, Louis van Gaal, who has done it many times over to make a great team out of players. So yeah, I'm hopeful that there is a good chance they can make it far into the tournament again. And sometimes you also need a little bit of luck, right? So you need to find momentum, and you need to have a little bit of luck on your side. Yeah, that's what it takes to sometimes win a trophy. And after a very disappointing Euros, where everyone had big expectation from Holland, after a good run in the Nations League and preparing, The Euros was, of course, very disappointing, but we are very hopeful to have a good World Cup.
My apologies. Holland has also already qualified, so forgive my ignorance on that.
Yeah.
I'm curious though. We've talked a lot about football. We've talked a lot about Bitcoin and the economy. I love to sort of try to find similarities between Bitcoin and just anything in general. Are there similarities in playing football through your experiences and what you have seen or learned about Bitcoin?
Sorry, can you rephrase that question again?
Sure. In your experience in playing football, are there certain characteristics about the match itself or just the game that are similar to what you see in Bitcoin, or that you can sort of analyze and say, oh, this is like this experience in soccer or in football is like this thing in Bitcoin? If not, that's fine. I just have given you homework to do.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you could make an analogy that, Bitcoin where it is today is like a talented player with big potential, that still has to do a lot of work to, at the end, fulfill his ultimate potential to become maybe the best. Well, I mean, it's already considered the best asset class, in the world. But I was going to say, right, like in terms of football, to become the best player in the world. But yeah, maybe is the closest analogy that I can think of,
Neymar. Neymar.
Right.
Sorry,
yeah.
We like to have fun here.
Yeah, of course.
Would you ever consider, obviously, should the money and the opportunity be appropriate, playing over here in America and spreading the love of soccer here? Both Chris and myself literally want soccer to be the number one sport in this country.
Yeah.
But we're not going to be the ones who do it. It'll be players like yourself.
You know what? I have tried many times. Even recently, I gave an agent, the authority to find, a team out there. But I think, the MLS slowly has changed its ways, how they looking at, getting Europeans. Back in the day, it used to be, at your end of your career, you're trying to get maybe, a player from Europe. But now, as what I understood, they're now looking for a little bit more younger players. And I guess, unfortunately, I fall outside of that scope a little bit. I don't know if that's 100%, correct. But yeah, so far, no luck of real interest of, me going to the MLS. But I've tried many times.
We'd be happy to have you here. I mean, you always need a more experienced striker to show, the young midfielders or the wingers what to do.
Right.
Put a ball in the back of the net or two. Q, go ahead.
Right.
Like, seriously, I'm about to go harass both the LA Galaxy and LAFC and be like, what the actual fuck, guys? I have noticed this trend that you're talking about. And I actually used to work at a soccer sports agency that primarily focused on US national players. And this was right after the 2014 World Cup, where for whatever reason, every US men's national player in Europe decided to come back. And I personally feel like it stagnated US soccer to hold back our youth players from playing at the highest levels in Europe. Whereas helping to bring attention to the sport of soccer, the sport of football, by bringing those marquee players like yourself, like a David Beckham when he first came over here, like a David Villa, and have like true talent, like true football talent, really show us what it's like, inspire the young generation, ship them overseas, and then US soccer becomes a mainstay as a legitimate contender. But that was my pitch to be the head of US Soccer Federation. I'm submitting my application now, so please. Cool.
Yeah. No, but I mean, it's true. Like, um, obviously football hasn't been one of the main sports in the US. I think that's the only country, globally where they didn't take football that serious. But yeah, if they really wanna, if they're really serious about developing and make it more interesting, I feel definitely, yeah, some rules have to change and to hype up the level more, also for American talents who are serious about becoming a football player. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we kind of have a cultural problem in the United States, and this is not saying it's a problem with our culture. It's just the way that our schooling education system set up. You go to grade school, from 6 years old to 18, and then it really primes you, at least in the US, to go to college. And I know where a lot of Europe, you guys have youth academies where you're starting as young as I guess
Yeah.
like 8 or 9 years old, I think is as low it can go, or even younger.
Yeah.
A lot of times I guess you would know better than me, but I think by 12 years old, normally you're in a youth academy, and then a lot of them forego university. And that helps not springboard your career, but like kind of really give you a peak where you are starting your professional career at 17. And that opportunity doesn't really arise to Americans who are juniors in high school or 17 years in high school, and then ultimately go to the college level before going pro. Q, I don't know if there's anything you want to add to that.
Yeah, I mean, the system is not designed for growth in soccer, as you mentioned, Ryan. Like there's so many sports, and I think in this culture in particular, we value athletes maybe a little too much. Are there any other sports outside of football, basketball, American football? Are there any sports over here in America that you pay attention to, or any athletes here that you do admire?
I mean, I definitely admire the most common athletes, obviously, that have done really well for themselves, not only on the sports level, but also outside, in private life, to inspire youth. I think right now LeBron is the ultimate example, of course, who does a lot of great things. But back in the days, you had the Michael Jordans, Magic Johnsons, those type of athletes. I mean, I even remember what's his name, Steve Nash, that I was able to participate in one of his foundations in New York, what he did every year in the summer. So yeah, these are great people. I don't really follow basketball like that. Of course, when there's playoffs, then slowly I'll be more interested in following what's happening. But during the normal season, I have a hard time catching up with the time differences, and so mostly I watch highlights, or I read about it. That's kind of how I follow. Yeah.
I don't hold that against you at all. I mean, the time difference, I'm so sorry for the mistakes, the time difference trying to schedule this.
No problem.
Hearing that you're a LeBron fan, I myself am a diehard Lakers fan. So you are adopted into the Lakers family.
Okay.
I don't know if it's a good family to be in right now.
Right.
But you're welcome anytime, my friend.
Yeah. Okay, yeah.
I have to ask you, and I do not hold it against you, although maybe some of our viewers may be a little upset at this. I know your Twitter profile picture is an NFT. And my understanding is you have investments beyond just Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. Right. Can you define in your own words, what is the difference between Bitcoin and crypto?
I think you have Bitcoin and you have crypto. That's already the difference. Yeah, I feel like the biggest misconception is that people think that Bitcoin's purpose is currency. I think it's more of an asset, right? They call it digital gold, they call it property. So I think if once that really becomes more clear, that you can look at Bitcoin as, digital real estate, digital property, digital gold, then people will have a clear view of the difference between Bitcoin and Ethereum, because you have many people out there who are trying to fight you to say Ethereum is better than Bitcoin. And I try to tell them, like, if you are going to make that comparison, then I'm not going to take you serious, because they're not in the same league, so a lot of people are struggling with, they think, Bitcoin is too expensive, so I'm going to buy a replacement. I'm going to buy Dogecoin, and I have a cheaper Bitcoin now. I'm like, no, that's not how it works. Right? So, you have Bitcoin, and then you have the rest of these 10, 15,000 coins that are out there.
That is well said. And hopefully every single one of your teammates hears that and just focuses on Bitcoin to start.
Right.
It gets messy. There's too much, and there's so much information.
Yeah, I know.
Talk to us a little bit about beyond your teammates and your family and friends. I'm assuming that you have also had conversations about Bitcoin with them, maybe also your agent. What were those conversations like? Was there pushback where they're like, oh, what is this thing? Oh, you're just gambling, you're going to lose all your money? Or were they like, oh, let's do this?
Yeah. Actually, I'm very picky with who I am going to start conversations with, because you have a lot of stubborn people who have already their opinion ready. So I think usually I approach people that I feel like there's room to change their ways of thinking. And again, it's almost the same type of conversations that I have also with my colleagues. It's just about a little bit of the fundamentals, the use cases, and why Bitcoin is seen as the asset that it is. You're slowly trying to give them information, and sometimes send them little videos where an explanation will be more clear to them. And then it takes a few conversations for them to be like, okay, you know what, I'm gonna try a little bit, right? But those are the nice accomplishments once you have had those conversations, that they are open-minded to it. And it's a fun process.
Well, Ryan, given how picky you are having conversations, I have to say thank you so much for having a conversation with two Bitcoin plebs.
Right. No problem. Thanks.
Chris, I cut you off again, man. Go ahead.
No, I was going to do some rapid fire questions if Ryan doesn't mind.
No problem. Let's go.
All right. Messi or Ronaldo?
Messi.
All right. What's your personal favorite team? So even though you like Galatasaray and teams that you've played on, what's the team that you supported growing up?
Growing up was first, of course, my hometown team, Ajax.
Okay.
After that, it was Arsenal as well.
Oh, that hurts. That hurts, Ryan.
Yeah, the Invincibles. Thierry Henry was my ultimate, player that I looked up to. And then, of course, after that, a lot of Dutch players went to Barcelona. So, you try and have a thing with Barcelona as well. A few teams here and there that I love to follow. AC Milan, back in the days, with Kaká, Seedorf, obviously. But, nowadays, I feel like football goes so fast, right? So you hardly catch up with players changing teams. And if I look at AC Milan right now, I hardly know the whole team, the first starting 11. I recognize 2-3 players, and that's it. I'm like, where are all these players come from? Times have changed a little bit. Back in the days, football, the teams were sticking with each other a few years. So they were very recognizable, also their identity. And nowadays it's very quick. It's became a real business.
What's the best player you've ever played with? No offense to any past or present teammates that don't make this list for you, but what's the best player you've ever played with?
Yeah, I still have to give to Steven Gerrard.
Okay, that under a legend in its own right, so that makes sense. Favorite goal you've ever scored?
Ooh, very difficult. I scored a few great goals. I guess I have to give it a goal that I scored against Manchester United on Anfield.
All right, that's a good one as well. And then Bitcoin or crypto?
Bitcoin.
All right, there we go. Q, you have anything else?
I have a couple questions that I kind of want to, if you don't mind answering, and if you don't want to answer these, you don't have to.
Sure.
Firstly, I want to talk to you a little bit about what your thoughts on this FIFA expansion is. We saw an attempt to create this Super League that got killed by the fans. You have FIFA expanding the World Cup to now have 48 teams. And then on top of that, now there's an expansion on the Champions League. So now you're playing even more games in the Champions League. You've discussed already how there's so much football going on, and FIFA is just adding more. What are your thoughts on this as a player who plays?
Difficult question, because I tend to not to worry too much or create too much of an opinion if I don't really have influence on it. And also if it doesn't directly influence my routine, to say, if that makes sense. Of course, I followed it a little bit, and I mean, I don't really have an opinion on those changes. I must say that yes, I am for a certain type of protection for football players in general, because we play and travel and do so much, where sometimes it affects our mental health. But fans don't see that. Fans don't know that, and fans just judge us based on the performance that we give. So and sometimes, often, it's very unfair, because at the same time, we as football players, we're also humans, but we not always, or most of the time, we don't get those type of human treatments, right? And a little bit of a different topic, like, we as football players are often not allowed to have an opinion on stuff. Or if let's say we get racial abuse, then if you're going to stand up for yourself, then the reaction after that will be like, you're a professional, you should stand above it and don't say anything back. Like, those remarks and all those things, like, you almost feel like you have zero rights as football player. You have to be a robot and just do what people feel like you should do, right? Those little things, for me, I personally feel more related to. I remember back in the days, when I was more on Twitter, when Twitter was still a thing before Instagram. I was very active on Twitter. I remember tweeting at a certain time in the evening, and then I had so many fans telling me, "Go to sleep, you have training in the morning." So all of a sudden, it was like, they telling me not to be on social media anymore. Like, you're being lived by people, and I feel like, those are the little things that I feel like, if people show more a little bit sympathy of, like, hey, he's also human, he also likes other things, then, in his spare time.
I'd love to unpack that a little bit, if you don't mind. Just, we hear so much about the racism that goes on in football. You're traveling to different countries. Where, if you don't mind sharing, like, where are certain countries that are just the worst? Or is there a certain team or city where you've told your agent, they can pay me $1 million a match, I will never play in this stadium or for this team?
I mean, I personally, I was only one time actually racial abuse, and it was, it was like almost 15, 16 years ago. That was with the Dutch national team when we played in Romania. So the Romanian fans, they were making monkey sounds, but other than that, I've never personally experienced racism like that in stadiums or in fans. But of course, you catch other cases, Balotelli in Italy had a lot of, occasions like that. So, yeah, I think Italy maybe would be a place where I would kind of be hesitant to go if I would still have an opportunity. But, racism is everywhere. We have a lot of racism in Holland still, and often, actually, those type of racism is actually even worse, because we have that sneaky racism, right? Meaning, it's not so obvious, but it was racist. So, and they be funny about it, jokely about it, and then they be like, oh, come on, it was just a joke. And then they look at you crazy, So I feel like those type of racism is actually worse because it happens and you can actually not really say something about it because you have to assume he didn't meant it like that,
Right.
That happens often in Holland, actually.
No, I mean, you're not wrong. It happens all over the world, unfortunately. Unfortunately, there's nothing we can do to change someone's mind. All we can do is love harder. I am
Yeah.
truly sorry that those are experiences that you have had. I've had my own fair share of experiences, no different.
Yeah.
I do hope that in some way, in some capacity, even fans of opposing teams can just become a little bit more intelligent. It's so much fun to trash talk, but like in a smart way.
Right.
Like if you can do it funny and make the other person laugh, actually not laugh, not uncomfortable, it's great. Fuck them. I'm not supposed to curse anymore, but F them.
Right.
Ryan, before we wrap things up, I do want to give you the opportunity to maybe share with our viewers where they can follow you on Twitter, or if you prefer Instagram more, and maybe any exciting things you have coming out, of course, beyond just some upcoming matches, and hopefully you'll be participating in the World Cup with Holland as well.
Oh yeah, thanks. Well, I mean, most of my social medias are just my full name, Ryan Babel, Instagram, Twitter. I have a YouTube channel where I, from time to time, do a little bit of vlogging, show behind the scenes of my life or my football team. I'm on LinkedIn. Obviously, I'm on Facebook. I don't use Facebook so much. But I started a side account on Instagram called RB The Business. Right now it's offline, but it will be online again very soon, where I also teach a little bit financial literacy in my own way, investing, economics, Bitcoin, real estate, where I talk about it. Right now, we are a small community of 5,000 followers that I've grew without promoting it on my main account, because I wanted to make sure that the people who follow me there are actually interested in, the content that has been posted there, right? Because if I'm going to start talking about Bitcoin too much on my main account, people be like, focus on football, so.
And Ryan, if any of the things that you're working on for RB Business, if we could be helpful, especially on the Bitcoin related stuff, like feel free to reach out. We're happy to help you produce that content. We're happy to help give you information that you can use. Whatever can help you spread the word on Bitcoin, we'll be more than happy to help facilitate.
Okay, great. No, thank you. You guys also have like personal socials?
Yeah, I'm going to message you from my personal Twitter, and Chris will as well, so we can connect there.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, awesome. Ryan, wish you the best of luck. Hope you have a long career. As long as you're not playing one of my teams, I'll definitely be supporting you. So I wish you the best of luck. And
Ryan,
all right, man. Thank you.
I'm putting this in the universe. You're either coming to the MLS or you're going to play at Arsenal. One or the other. That's the next club.
Well, I don't prefer the Arsenal thing. So US it is, I guess.
Definitely Arsenal.
All right, guys. Ciao.
Peace out, Ryan. Have a good one.